I didn't know my life was already being treated like a placeholder until I heard my fiancé laugh and say it out loud. She's temporary, he said, amused, casual, like he was talking about a rental car. Once I find better, she'll be gone in a day. I remember standing there, phone pressed to my ear, my face completely still, my voice calm in a way that didn't match what was happening inside my chest. Good to know, I replied. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him. I didn't even let my tone change. Because sometimes the most devastating moments don't come with drama. They come with clarity. I'm 29 years old, and until last week, I genuinely believed I had my life figured out. My name is Alexa, and for 3 years I was engaged to a man named Nathan. We had the full picture people envy from the outside. 8 months engaged. A condo in both our names, a dog we adopted together. Weekend routines, future plans, the kind of relationship people describe as solid. Nathan worked in real estate. He was ambitious, polished, charming when he wanted to be. He made good money, talked confidently about investments and timing and strategy. I thought we were building something real. I was wrong. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have planned for, was that I heard him say those words. Not directly to me, but close enough to feel like they were carved into my spine. And what he definitely didn't know was what happened after he said them. Because the next afternoon, I got a text message that changed everything. "Don't block me," it read. "I need to tell you what happened after he said that." It was from his younger sister. That was the moment I understood this wasn't just about a cruel comment or a bad joke. This was about the fact that I was living with someone who had already decided I was replaceable and was just waiting for a better option to come along. I stayed calm. I stayed quiet. And then I started planning. This is the story of how I found out I was engaged to a man who saw me as temporary, and how, without raising my voice, I walked away from a life that was never truly mine to begin with. Before I ever heard Nathan reduce me to something temporary, there was a version of our relationship that felt steady, even enviable. When people asked how we were doing, I used to say, "Good, really good," and I meant it. Or at least, I meant what I believed at the time. I was 26 when we met. I worked in consulting, the kind of job where your calendar changes by the hour and you learn to live out of a carry-on bag. It wasn't glamorous, but it was challenging, and I was proud of how far I'd come on my own. I liked structure. I liked planning. I liked the idea of building a future carefully, step by step. Nathan fit neatly into that picture at first. We met through mutual friends at a small get-together. He was confident in a way that felt reassuring, not arrogant. He talked easily about real estate deals, market trends, long-term plays. He seemed focused, driven, someone who knew where he was going. When he asked what I did, he listened, asked follow-up questions, told me he admired ambition. I remember thinking, this feels balanced. Our early months were effortless. We moved fast, but it didn't feel reckless. Dinners turned into weekends together. Weekends turned into keys exchanged. We adopted Max after a year, laughing about how it felt like a test run for something bigger. When we bought the condo together, it felt like a milestone, not a risk. Both our names on the deed, shared furniture, shared plans. 8 months before everything fell apart, he proposed. It wasn't extravagant. No crowd, no cameras. Just us in the living room. Max barking like he knew something important was happening. Nathan knelt, open in the box, and asked me to marry him with a calm certainty that made me feel chosen. I said yes without hesitation. Looking back, the cracks were already there. They just hadn't made noise yet. Nathan had always been image aware. He cared about how things looked, on social media, to clients, to friends. At first, I told myself that was normal. Everyone curates a little. Everyone wants to be seen a certain way. But gradually, his attention shifted from us to how we appeared. He'd correct small details when I told stories, suggest better phrasing, encourage me to frame things differently when we talked about my work or our life together. If I mentioned stress or uncertainty, he'd gently steer the conversation back towards stability, optics, reassurance. "You don't want people thinking we're not solid," he'd say. His family noticed things I didn't want to see yet. His younger sister, Emma, especially. She was warm, genuine, openly skeptical of Nathan's obsession with status. Over dinners, she'd roll her eyes when he talked about upgrading this or optimizing that. "He talks about life like a spreadsheet," she once muttered to me in the kitchen. I laughed it off. But as time went on, I noticed how differently he treated Emma versus how he treated me. With her, he was blunt, With me, he was strategic, measured, always one step ahead of the conversation. I told myself that was maturity. I told myself that love didn't have to be loud to be real. What I didn't realize was that somewhere along the way, Nathan had stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as a position he was holding until something better opened up. I just didn't know it yet. The unsettling part wasn't that things suddenly went wrong, it was that nothing obviously went wrong at all. From the outside, our life still looked intact. We still shared routines, still talked about the future, still planned dinners, trips, and eventually a wedding. But underneath that surface, something had shifted so gradually that I didn't recognize it as danger until it had already settled in. Nathan became more distant in small, precise ways. Not cold, not cruel, just selective. He started filtering what parts of me he engaged with. When I talked about work stress, he'd listen politely, then redirect. When I talked about long-term goals that didn't align perfectly with his timeline, he'd smile and say, "We'll see," in a tone that quietly closed the discussion. At social gatherings, I began to notice how often he answered questions for me. "She works in consulting," he'd say quickly, before I could explain what that actually meant to me. "She's busy right now, but she loves it," he'd add, even when I hadn't said that. It wasn't that he lied, it was that he edited. I started feeling like certain versions of me were more welcome than others. The calm one, the agreeable one, the one who didn't complicate his narrative. His friends reinforced that feeling without realizing it. Conversations revolved around deals, leverage, connections. I contributed when I could, but often felt like I was being evaluated rather than included. Nathan noticed, and instead of pulling me closer, he subtly positioned himself as the buffer. "I've got this," he'd whisper. "You don't have to jump in." At first, it felt considerate. Later, it felt like containment. Emma noticed before I did. One night after a family dinner, she walked me to my car and hesitated before speaking. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Do you ever feel like my brother talks around you instead of with you?" I laughed, instinctively defensive. "I think that's just how he is." She nodded, but didn't look convinced. "Just don't let him make you smaller, okay?" I promised her I wouldn't. I didn't realize I already had. The doubts came in quiet moments. When I caught myself rehearsing how to phrase something before saying it. When I stopped sharing certain thoughts because I knew they wouldn't land well. When I started measuring my worth by how useful or stable I seemed instead of how honest or present I felt. Nathan never told me directly to change. He didn't need to. His expectations were always just clear enough. I remember one night lying next to him, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I felt lonelier in a relationship than I ever had on my own. I told myself it was just pre-wedding stress, that everyone feels this way before committing. But deep down, a quieter voice was asking a more dangerous question. If I stopped being convenient, would he still choose me? I didn't ask him. I didn't ask myself. And that silence is what allowed the next moment, the one that shattered everything, to hit as hard as it did. It happened on a Tuesday. Not during a fight, not during some dramatic blow-up, just an ordinary weekday that cracked my life cleanly in half. I came home early that afternoon because a client meeting had been canceled at the last minute. Consulting does that to you. Your schedule shifts without warning, and you learn to roll with it. I didn't text Nathan. I thought it would be nice to surprise him. Maybe we'd grab a late lunch together. Maybe we'd just sit on the couch with Max and enjoy the quiet. I unlocked the door around 2 p.m. and immediately heard voices coming from the living room. Nathan was on FaceTime. He was laughing. That specific laugh he used when he'd already had a drink or two, when he felt relaxed enough to let the mask slip. I was about to announce myself when I heard my name. "Oh my God, I know, right?" he said. "She's so boring sometimes." I stopped walking. Max came trotting toward me, tail wagging, nails clicking on the floor. I grabbed his collar quickly, pulling him back against my leg before he could run in and give me away. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Nathan kept talking. "Like, she's stable, she's nice, but where's the excitement?" he continued. "Where's the passion?" I stood there in the hallway, just out of sight, frozen. "She's temporary," he said next, his tone light, almost amused. "Once I find better, she'll be gone in a day. I'm just riding this out until something more interesting comes along." The person on the other end of the call said something I couldn't hear. Nathan laughed again. "I'm serious," he added. "The ring is nice, and the condo's in both our names, so at least I'll get something out of it when we split." My chest tightened so suddenly, it felt like someone had wrapped a band around my ribs and pulled. 3 years. 3 years of shared plans, shared space, shared life, reduced to a waiting room. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, maybe less. Time didn't behave normally in that moment. Everything slowed down, sharpened, burned itself into my memory with brutal precision. Then I walked into the living room like nothing had happened. "Hey," I said casually. Nathan jumped, nearly dropping his phone. "Oh my God, you scared me. You're home early." "Meeting got canceled," I replied evenly. "Who are you talking to?" "Just Ashley," he said quickly. "You know, girl talk." He smiled at me. That smile I used to think was genuine. "Cool," I said. "I'm going to change." I went into the bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them into my thighs to steady them. Temporary. I'd built a life with someone who saw me as something to be replaced, and in that moment I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to confront him yet. I was going to be careful. I didn't cry right away. That surprised me more than anything. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the faint sound of Nathan's voice drifting from the living room, his tone light and careless, like he hadn't just dismantled 3 years of my life with a few sentences. My hands were still shaking, but my face felt strangely calm, almost numb. It was as if my body understood the danger before my heart could catch up. I changed my clothes slowly, deliberately, giving myself time to breathe. Every familiar object in the room suddenly felt foreign. The framed photos, the neatly folded laundry, the engagement ring sitting on the dresser like a prop from someone else's story. Temporary. The word replayed over and over in my head. When I walked back into the living room, Nathan looked up at me with that same relaxed expression. He said something about dinner plans, asked if I wanted takeout or if we should cook. I nodded in the right places, answered with short, neutral responses, amazed at how easily my body slipped into normalcy. That night, I did everything I always did. I made dinner. We watched a show. I laughed when he laughed. I went to bed beside him. He fell asleep quickly. I didn't. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, counting his breaths, feeling like I was lying next to a stranger who happened to know all my habits. I kept asking myself the same question, over and over. How long has he been thinking this? Was it recent? Was it always there? Was the proposal just a delay tactic? I didn't spiral. I didn't imagine scenes or scream into pillows. Instead, something quieter took over, an instinct I didn't know I had. Self-preservation. The next morning, while Nathan was in the shower, I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand and stared at one name. Emma, his younger sister. If there was one person in his family who had never treated me like an accessory, it was her. She was 25, a teacher, and the emotional opposite of her brother. Where Nathan was calculated, Emma was direct. Where he curated, she questioned. I typed the message slowly. "Hey, can you call me when you get a chance? It's important." She replied within minutes. "I'm at school right now. Can I call you at 4? Why?" "Perfect," I wrote back. At 4:15, my phone rang. I was sitting alone in my car in a grocery store parking lot, having told Nathan I needed to run errands. "What's going on?" Emma asked immediately. No small talk, no easing in. I told her everything, word for word. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'm so sorry," she said finally. "I wish I could say I'm surprised, but..." "But what?" I asked, even though I already sensed the answer. "Nathan's always been like this," she said quietly, "even in high school. He used to rank people, date someone while actively looking for an upgrade. I thought maybe he'd changed with you. I really did." "Good to know," I said, the same words I'd said to him in my head the day before. "I wouldn't confront him yet," Emma added carefully. "If you need anything, a place to stay, help moving, just tell me." "Not yet," I said, "but I might." That night, I went home and acted normal again. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't heartbroken. I was alert. And for the first time since I'd met Nathan, I wasn't thinking about how to fix the relationship. I was thinking about how to protect myself. By Wednesday morning, I wasn't guessing anymore. I was preparing. I called a lawyer during my lunch break and explained the situation without emotion, like I was describing someone else's life. The condo was in both our names. We weren't married yet. I needed to understand my options before Nathan sensed anything had shifted. The lawyer was calm, practical. He told me it was complicated, but manageable. Joint assets could be disentangled. Timelines mattered. Documentation mattered. He advised me to stop making joint financial decisions immediately and to start separating what I could, quietly. So I did. That afternoon, I opened a new checking account. I redirected my portion of the bills there instead of our shared account. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just small, deliberate steps that created distance without raising alarms. Wednesday evening, I got home before Nathan. I was standing in the kitchen when my phone buzzed. It was Emma. "Don't block me," her message read. "I need to tell you what happened after he said that." My stomach dropped. I called her immediately. "What are you talking about?" I asked. "I confronted Nathan," she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. "After you told me what you overheard, I couldn't sleep. I went over to your place this morning before work. He was there alone, getting ready." I sat down at the kitchen table. "I asked him directly if he loved you," Emma continued. "He laughed." I closed my eyes. "He said, 'Emma, don't be naive. Love is a nice story we tell ourselves. I'm with her because she's stable. She'll be a good mother someday. She doesn't ask too many questions. But if someone richer, more exciting, more impressive comes along, I'm not going to feel guilty about upgrading.'" It felt like being punched in the stomach. "She said that?" I whispered. "Word for word," Emma said. "And then he told me not to tell you. Said you were happy living in your fantasy world, and there was no need to ruin it." There was a pause. "There's more," she added. "He mentioned he's been having lunches with some investor he met through work. His name is David. He said nothing's happened yet, but he's keeping his options open." I stared at the countertop, unable to speak. Max patted over and rested his head on my knee, sensing something was wrong. "I'm sorry I'm the one telling you this," Emma said softly, "but you deserve to know who you're engaged to." "Thank you," I replied, and I meant it. Really. When Nathan got home that night, he was in a great mood. He talked about a sale he'd closed, suggested we plan a vacation, brought up wedding venues like none of this existed. I smiled. I nodded. I said the right things. Inside, I felt nothing. By Thursday morning, I crossed a line I never thought I would. While Nathan was in the shower, I opened his laptop. His email was already up. I found the messages between him and David. Careful, polished, flirtatious without being explicit. Plans for lunches, coffee, a dinner the following week. One message from David read, "Can't wait to see you again. Your fiancée is a lucky woman, for now." Nathan's reply came seconds later. "Haha, we'll see how long that lasts. Still testing the waters." I took screenshots, sent them to myself from an account he didn't know about, closed the laptop, went to work like nothing had happened. That afternoon, I showed everything to the lawyer. He said the emails might not matter legally, but they would matter if Nathan tried to rewrite the story. By Friday, I started moving my most important things out of the condo, slowly. Documents, clothes, personal items. I took them to a friend's place. He didn't ask questions. He just helped me carry boxes. "You okay?" he asked. "I will be," I said. Saturday morning, Nathan announced he was going to brunch with friends. He kissed me on the cheek and left. 10 minutes later, Emma texted me. "He's not at brunch. I'm at the restaurant he told Mom he'd be at. He's not here." I already knew where he was. "I know," I texted back. "It's fine. Let it play out." By Sunday, I was ready. I'd gathered evidence, secured my finances, made sure I had somewhere to land. Now, all that was left was to end it. Sunday morning arrived quietly. No alarms, no tension in the air. Just the soft sound of Max moving around the apartment and the pale light slipping in through the kitchen window. I woke up before Nathan did and lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, letting the weight of the week settle fully into my body. This was it. There was no more planning left to do, no more gathering information, no more pretending. Everything that could protect me had already been set in motion. What remained was the hardest part, the moment where I had to stand in the truth without flinching. I got up and made breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, coffee, the kind of breakfast that felt almost cruel in its normalcy. Nathan came into the kitchen in his pajamas, hair still messy, looking genuinely surprised. "What's all this?" "I just wanted to do something nice," I said calmly. "We should talk." Something shifted in his expression immediately. Not fear, calculation. "About what?" he asked, sitting down. "About us, about the future." He poured himself coffee, nodding. "Okay." I took my phone out and placed it on the table between us. The screen lit up with a screenshot, the FaceTime call from Tuesday, the moment he'd laughed and called me temporary. I'd managed to pull the recording from our home security footage. "I heard what you said," I said evenly, "about me being temporary, about leaving once you find something better." The color drained from his face, then rushed back in a flush of anger. "You were spying on me." "I came home early," I replied. "You were loud. And then your sister told me what you said to her on Wednesday. And then I found your emails with David." He stood up abruptly. "You went through my email? That's a violation." "A violation of what?" I asked quietly. "Privacy? Trust? Because I'm pretty sure you violated those first." He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I asked. I was venting. I had a bad day. You told your sister you wouldn't feel guilty replacing me if someone richer and more exciting came along, I said. You told her I was living in a fantasy world and she shouldn't tell me the truth. Those aren't bad day words. Those are real thoughts. He sat back down, hands gripping the edge of the table. I could see his mind working, trying to spin this into something manageable. You're taking this out of context, he said finally. I slid my phone closer to him. Explain the context of this email where you told David you're still testing the waters with me. He stared at the screen. For the first time since I'd known him, Nathan had nothing to say. I'm moving out, I said. Most of my things are already gone. I'll be completely out by Monday. My lawyer will be in touch about the condo. Your lawyer? His voice jumped an octave. Are you serious right now? Completely. The engagement is off. We're done. He started crying then. Loud, dramatic sobs. The kind that used to pull me back into arguments, that used to make me doubt myself. Please, he said. We can work on this. I'll change. I love you. I looked at him and felt something final settle into place. No, I said softly. You love stability. You love what I provide, but you don't love me. And I don't think I love you anymore either. I stood up, grabbed my jacket. Max followed me without hesitation. Nathan didn't stop me. When the door closed behind us, the silence was overwhelming. I sat in my car with my hands on the steering wheel and finally felt it. The grief, the exhaustion, the full weight of what I'd just ended. Not just a relationship, but the future I'd been carefully arranging around someone who never planned to choose me fully. That was the lowest point. Not because I'd lost him, but because I realized how close I'd come to losing myself. The shift didn't happen when I closed the door behind me. It happened later, in the quiet. I drove aimlessly for a while, Max curled up in the passenger seat like he understood that something permanent had just changed. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my chest felt hollow, like a room after furniture has been removed. Not empty, cleared. I didn't go back to the condo. Instead, I went to a small apartment across town that I'd viewed earlier in the week, just in case. The landlord handed me the keys without ceremony. I signed the papers, unloaded a few boxes, and slept on a mattress on the floor that night. It wasn't comfortable, it wasn't polished, but it was quiet. And for the first time in months, that quiet didn't feel threatening. Nathan texted that night, then again the next morning. Apologies layered with accusations, promises mixed with outrage. I didn't reply. My lawyer would handle communication now. That boundary, once placed, felt solid, like a wall that couldn't be argued with. The real turning point came midweek. Emma called me on Wednesday evening. I need to tell you something, she said. Nathan went to Mom and Dad's. I sat on the edge of the mattress, listening. He told them you left out of nowhere, she continued. That you overreacted. That you invaded his privacy and walked away instead of trying to fix things. I didn't feel the need to interrupt. I showed them everything, Emma said. The screenshots, the messages, I told them exactly what he said about you being temporary. There was a pause. My mom cried, she added quietly. My dad asked me to call you and apologize on their behalf. Something loosened in my chest then. Not satisfaction, not victory, just release. Thank you, I said, but you don't need to apologize for him. I know, Emma replied. I just thought you should know. They see him differently now. That mattered more than I expected. Not because I needed validation, but because the truth had landed. It wasn't mine to carry alone anymore. The next day, a message came through from David. I stared at his name on my screen for a full minute before opening it. Hey, I just want you to know nothing happened between Nathan and me. We were just talking. I typed my reply slowly. Good to know. He's all yours now. Good luck. He never responded. That was the moment I fully understood something that changed everything. Nathan didn't lose me because I was replaceable. He lost me because I stopped participating in the lie that I was. I went back to work the following week, sat in meetings, answered emails, walked Max in the evenings, built a routine that didn't revolve around anticipation or anxiety. Friends helped furnish the apartment. Emma came over one night with a plant and a bottle of whiskey. You look different, she said, handing me the bottle. Lighter, I guessed? She nodded. Stronger. That night, I lay in bed listening to the unfamiliar sounds of a new neighborhood and realized something quietly powerful. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for explanations, not for closure, not for someone better to come along. I had crossed a line Nathan never expected me to cross. I had chosen myself, and once you do that, the balance of power never goes back. The days that followed were messy, loud, and strangely distant all at once. Nathan's messages escalated in waves. 1 hour he was apologetic, reflective, almost poetic about losing the best thing that ever happened to him. The next, he was furious, accusing me of betrayal, of humiliation, of destroying something that could have been fixed. I didn't answer a single one. I didn't need to. My lawyer became the filter between us, and with that came a kind of emotional insulation I hadn't known I was allowed to have. Conversations about the condo were reduced to emails and timelines, numbers instead of feelings, procedures instead of manipulation. Nathan, without an audience, struggled. He tried to control the story with vague posts online, quotes about heartbreak, about being blindsided, about people who run when things get hard. People reacted politely, but the sympathy he expected never fully arrived. Too many details didn't add up. Too many people noticed how carefully he avoided specifics. Emma filled me in gently, never with relish. He showed up at my parents' house again, she said one evening, crying, saying he didn't mean any of it, that he was just being honest and people misunderstood. And? I asked. My dad told him honesty without empathy is just cruelty, she replied. I've never seen him say something like that to Nathan before. That was when I understood that the fallout wasn't just romantic, it was structural. His parents were disappointed, not in a dramatic way, but in the way that settles into silence. His friends began distancing themselves not because they sided with me, but because the image they'd bought into no longer felt reliable. People don't like realizing they've misjudged someone. Nathan tried once more to reach me directly. A voicemail. His voice sounded small. I don't understand how you could just walk away, he said, after everything we built. I listened to it once, then deleted it, because what we built wasn't mutual. It was conditional. Meanwhile, my life began expanding into the space he'd vacated. I moved fully into the apartment, bought a couch that I liked without asking anyone's opinion, hung art he would have called impractical, took Max to a park nearby where no one knew my story and no one needed to. Friends checked in. Some admitted they'd noticed things about Nathan, but didn't know how to bring them up. Others simply showed up with food, with laughter, with the quiet understanding that I didn't need advice. One night, over dinner, a friend asked, "Do you miss him?" I thought about it carefully. I miss the future I thought I had, I said. I don't miss him. That answer surprised even me. Through Emma, I heard that Nathan's situation with David fizzled quickly. Without secrecy, without the thrill of an almost affair, whatever appeal he'd felt evaporated. Apparently, David lost interest once the upgrade fantasy came with consequences. It was never about connection. It was about ego. And ego doesn't survive exposure well. I didn't celebrate any of this. I didn't feel vindicated. What I felt was steadier than that. I felt unburdened. The fallout didn't destroy Nathan's life. It didn't need to. It only did one thing, and that was enough. It revealed him, and once revealed, he no longer had a place in mine. 6 weeks after I left, my life didn't look impressive from the outside. I lived in a smaller apartment. My furniture didn't match. Some nights, the quiet felt heavier than I expected. There were moments, brief ones, when I missed the version of my life that had looked complete on paper. But here's the truth I didn't anticipate. I felt peaceful. I woke up without bracing myself for disappointment. I didn't check my phone with a knot in my stomach. I didn't wonder whether the person beside me was secretly evaluating my worth, waiting for a better option to appear. I had my mornings back, my thoughts back, my voice back. Nathan still tried, indirectly, to exist in my orbit. According to Emma, he bounced between regret and resentment. One day he claimed he'd lost everything. The next, he insisted he'd dodged a bullet. I recognize that pattern now. It wasn't growth. It was damage control. The condo situation dragged on, just like my lawyer predicted. Negotiations, proposals, pushback. But none of it felt urgent anymore. Whatever the outcome, I knew I'd be fine. That was the real shift. Emma and I grew closer through all of it, not in some dramatic way, but in the quiet consistency of shared dinners, long conversations, and the unspoken agreement that honesty mattered more than loyalty to the wrong person. She made it clear, more than once, that she was embarrassed by her brother's behavior. I used to think he was just strategic, she told me one night. Now I see he just doesn't know how to love without ranking. Neither do some people. And that's not something you can fix from the inside of a relationship. Friends asked me why I didn't fight harder, why I didn't suggest therapy, why I didn't give him another chance. The answer was simple. You can't fix someone who doesn't believe they're broken. You can't build a future with someone who's already planning your replacement. Nathan didn't see what he did as betrayal. He saw it as pragmatism, as efficiency, as keeping his options open. And I refused to be an option. Max adjusted faster than I did. He found a new favorite park, new dog friends, a routine that didn't involve tension or raised voices. Sometimes I think he understood before I did that peace matters more than familiarity. Would I do anything differently? Maybe I would have trusted my discomfort sooner. Maybe I would have asked harder questions earlier. But I don't regret how I left. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I didn't try to hurt him the way he hurt me. I simply removed myself from a life where I was seen as temporary. And that, I've learned, is not weakness. It's clarity. If you're listening to this and something in you feels unsettled, if you're constantly proving your value, shrinking your needs, or waiting for someone to finally choose you, hear this clearly. The right person will not keep you as a backup plan. The right love does not require you to audition. I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I finally loved myself enough to walk away. And that choice changed everything.